Well, there's a fun project on the boat. Everyone loves to change their toilet. These Jabsco cheap toilets, hand pump toilets, they're cheap and they don't last very long. And the rebuild kits are almost as expensive as a whole toilet. So this one is on the way out and I've just bought a new one. I've actually splurged because I've got the one with the bigger bowl, which is really a lot nicer. And speaking as I have quite a large head in here, I have plenty of room to work. So I've taken the bolts out, which makes me happy because I wasn't sure that they were going to come out easily. They're into this strange fiberglass deck platform here that was built into this rather cool fiberglass shower head, one-piece wet shower. I don't know what you call it. Anyway, the hoses should come off fairly well. The toilet is now loose. And happily, the new toilet is the same bolt pattern, or I am so told. So pretty soon, hopefully I'll have a deluxe new toilet where the pump actually works. Cheers. The old one's out. Wasn't too miserable. Getting some of the hoses off was not too much fun, but it was redone relatively recently, this toilet installation, so it's not so bad. Anyway, so glad to be out with the old. Goodbye, crappy old Jabsco. So the first thing to do is modify the new, well, soon to be crappy Jabsco, because it'll only last a few years, to be a left-hand pump. And should be relatively straightforward. Take some screws out, put some stuff back together the other way. Cheers. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Same toilet, a couple of years newer. I went to some lengths to confirm that the bolt holes would line up and everything, but all the hose fittings are at completely different angles. And with very, very tight hose clearances down there, I have some grief. I hate taking stuff apart that sort of worked and you can't put it back together. And you know, the toilet's sort of critical. The boat does have another toilet in the fore cabin, but it's full of junk right now because I'm sort of in the middle of a bunch of projects. There's also a bathroom up at the marina office, but that's kind of sucky. Okay, let's bend some pipes around and see what we can do. Darr! And well, of course, the holes in the bottom of the toilet are a different size. But that's okay, we can deal with that with a drill pretty quick. Of course, the previous owner may have done this exact same drill with the drill, pun intended, with the previous toilet, and that's why the 3/8 bolts that were in there didn't fit through these holes. Just got to drill them out. Okay, maybe we'll be able to use the toilet soon, because actually, timing's getting a bit crucial. Cheers. Can't bloody win. It's all back together, and everything was working fine. Feels like quite a nice action. Except for, you probably can't see it, this tiny split in the main discharge hose, which of course if I use the toilet will pump poo all over my floor. And that was a really hard hose to get on. You wouldn't think it could split, but I guess it's old and fatigued. Doesn't look that old. Anyway, back to the marine store tomorrow morning. Get some hose. Take the toilet off. I can handle it. Cheers. Fuel tanks are really quite nice. I doubt they're original. Aluminum, welded aluminum. And there's two of them, about, as far as I can tell, about 85, 88 gallons each. But I wanted to clean them out. And the easiest way I could think of to clean them out was to drill a hole in the top and use copper tube with a fuel pump and to recirculate the water through my lovely big new Raycor here. But to drill a hole in the top, then I'd have to plug it later. So what I decided to do is put in proper senders, fuel senders. So these babies here are really, really quite sweet. They use a sliding float and obviously some sort of resistance element inside this tube to send a variable resistance up to gauges at the wheel to tell us how much fuel is in the tank. So I've cleaned up the tanks and I've polished all the fuel. I'm really, really pleased. And now I'm just installing these fuel senders. So it's really pretty straightforward. There's 5 holes. And what the aluminum is thick enough, it's really thick, 3/16 or so, so I'm drilling them and tapping them for machine screws. And I thought this might be a good point to give you a bit of a tour of how I'm doing that. The tank does have sight glasses. I don't know if you can see enough light down there, but it's kind of a miserable way to check your fuel, especially if you're underway. Anyway, so let's get carried along and put this fuel sender in. Cheers.
I'd already drilled and tapped 2 holes, so I could have it perfectly aligned to drill the other 3 holes. You have to be careful with these senders because these aren't equally spaced, so you put it on one direction, you can't turn it later, they won't line up. Anyway, so let's drill the other 3 holes. Trying to get them centered by tipping it a bit, coming back. Tip a bit, and stand up. Okay, now you might say, well, what about all this swarf going into the tank as well as the hole saw that cut the original hole? Well, if a chunk of this aluminum is going to pass through the 10 micron filter on that filter, I'll be really surprised. Anyway, let's get this off, tap it, and put it away. Okay, so all 5 holes are tapped. Let's reinstall this. I'm going to install this with only the cork gasket it came with and no splooge of any sort. I'll obviously be able to tell in some heavy weather if I need to add a little more sealant of some sort if I start to get some wicking around the edge of this. But I think I'll wait till I see that before I actually add anything, because it'd be nice if I could do this as a dry fitting. I'm not going to crank these down too far because after all they are tapped into aluminum. Get a couple more screws, and this should be a nice easy little job. And I'll have fuel gauges, which will be really, really nice, no doubt about it, and a port that I can always open easily, especially if I don't add any splooge, to access the tank and clean it out or anything that might come along. There we go. Some nice new stainless steel machine screws, and now just have to invest in some actual gauges to connect this to. Cheers! Job well done. Except now I gotta do the tank on the other side of the boat.